Hello, and welcome to our online training on managing performance. My name is April Pace, Vice President for CARDIA. On behalf of the California Primary Care Association and CARDIA, I'm pleased that you have selected this module to support your professional development. CARDIA is a nonprofit, mission-driven organization with a principal team of committed and passionate staff. We've dedicated our careers to helping health and human service providers offer their best to the patients they serve. You may be aware that CPCA is offering this training as part of their patient-centered health home recognition program. This initiative is designed to support the efforts of members' clinics as they move toward achieving National Committee for Quality Assurance recognition. CPCA has made a commitment to support community clinic and health centers in California to become a patient-centered health home. For more information, visit their website at www.cpca.org. Managing performance. Nurture your strongest staff and motivate your challenging staff. The learning objectives we will cover include identify qualities and skills of an effective manager, reflect on your own strengths as a manager, and list the administrative processes that support managing performance. This is a topic I love to train on and discuss. I've worked as a manager of staff for over 25 years and have studied and explored many resources to understand what it means to manage staff and how can I do it so there is growth for both me and the staff I manage. A key factor to managing your staff's performance is awareness of the various roles we play. We often juggle many hats. We directly supervise day-to-day tasks. We often work side by side delivering services. We are part of a management team and can be responsible for budgets, reports, performance reviews, funding applications. The tasks can be endless. As a manager, you're also a leader, which requires specific competencies. For the purpose of this session, I will use the term manager and leader interchangeably, since it is difficult to de-link these roles from each other. While many people in your organization can serve in a leadership role at a given time, a manager should have leadership skills and competencies in their work as manager. I will review these skills later. This diagram is based off Professor Robert Quinn's Competing Values Framework Theory over research in organizational effectiveness and success. This diagram is a more in-depth view of the many hats we wear as a manager and reflects the competencies needed for each. Ah, yes. Take a breath as this diagram explains why we are often overwhelmed. This highlights a few of the roles of an effective manager. These are the roles of director, coordinator, monitor, facilitator, mentor, innovator, broker, and producer. Can you think of more? As you can see, there are areas where we need some flexibility and some roles where we require more control. Others are internal, focused on you, and the other is external, having a deeper impact on others. What this demonstrates is that there are areas where we need to balance. Use this task list and add or delete, and create your own list that reflects your tasks. Then note for each which are tasks that are focused on you and skills you need. And note where you need to exercise flexibility and then control. If you are reviewing this as a team of managers, this is a good place to pause and share stories about your role as a manager. If you're watching this alone, still pause and write your story and analysis in a notebook. Think, how many hats were juggled? Which ones? What tasks must you implement in these roles? Are you able to balance? What could have been valuable in improving the outcome? I have with me Jeanette, who's been a manager for 15 years. Jeanette, how many hats do you juggle?
First and foremost, my days are action-packed. I put out a lot of fires. Primarily, I am a hiring manager, trainer, project manager, team lead, communicator, evaluator. I schedule and meet deadlines, and I am also an innovator by finding more efficient and effective ways to do my work.
Are you able to balance the different roles?
It's challenging. The only way I can balance is to have a good staff and rely on them as part of my team. I serve as a leader and I help them manage their tasks.
What tips do you have for balancing?
My tips for finding balance are having consistent expectations and giving consistent feedback.
A scorpion and a frog meet on the bank of a stream, and the scorpion asks the frog to carry him across on its back. The frog asks, "How do I know you won't sting me?" The scorpion says, "Because if I do, I will die too." The frog is satisfied, and they set out. But in midstream, the scorpion stings the frog. The frog feels the onset of paralysis and starts to sink, knowing they will both drown, but has just enough time to gasp, "Why?" Replies the scorpion, "It's my nature." People don't change that much. Don't waste time trying to put in what was left out. Try to draw out what was left in. That is hard enough. We typically focus on weaknesses, right? And try to fix them. Think how successful that was. If we adopted this moral, what implications does this have for you as a manager? There is a great resource that focuses on how to manage staff. This book is called First Break All the Rules. Gallup staff interviewed 80,000 managers and compiled some lessons from the great managers that I'm going to explore. The message in this book is that there are 4 main responsibilities each manager must do well. They state, you might have all the charisma, vision, and intelligence in the world, but if you cannot perform these 4 activities well, you will never excel as a manager. Never? Well, we want to embrace best practices, so let's examine the 4 keys. Select people based on talent. We often select based on experience, intelligence, educational achievement, and not focus on things such as ability to form opinions, empathy, assertiveness, drive, initiative, or attitude. We often miss when an employee does not have these talents. When setting expectations for employees, establish the right outcomes, not necessarily the right steps, which means you provide room for innovation and creativity to achieve the outcome and let go of the right steps or rigid rules. This may mean allowing staff to flex their time or take on a new responsibility that may not be in their job description. When motivating an individual, focus on strengths, not on weaknesses. If you have an employee who is a positive team member and has a positive attitude, acknowledge that first and discuss how they can improve in an area where they are weak. To develop an individual, find the right job fit for the person. Again, everyone has skills and talents, and you want to match them. As long as they contribute to the organization and have assets, they may be in a position where they will thrive. Now I'm going to ask Jeanette to recall the name of a great manager and answer these 2 questions. Why was that individual a great manager? What specific qualities and skills made that individual so effective as a manager?
The manager that I'm thinking of was a team player, calm, optimistic, modeled the behaviors and actions that were expected of me, let me make my own decisions, but also took the time to provide personal guidance and direction. She listened and kept me in the loop.
We have reviewed roles of managers and concepts about what makes an ideal manager. Now we will focus on reviewing the work environment and then administrative processes needed to support managing performance. We need to make the connection between a positive work environment and performance management. Again, First Break All the Rules highlights that the best companies that build a positive work environment profited more, were more productive as business units, retained more employees per year, and satisfied more customers. Without satisfying an employee's basic needs first, a manager can never expect the employee to give stellar performance. When building a positive work environment, the basic needs are communicating what is expected at work, giving the equipment and support to do the job right, providing feedback in a constructive way that addresses self-worth and self-esteem, and facilitating professional development and personal growth. Performance management is addressed in this module as part of a continuum. There are many factors and events that go into performance management, and the first part of this module was devoted to you and your role as a manager. Next, I will discuss the administrative processes necessary for performance management and ultimately creating a positive work environment for you and your staff. This is a list of factors that fall along that continuum and impacts your ability to manage an employee's performance. The clearer you and the organization are about the process, the better it creates an organizational culture that is intentional about how each person enters, from the vision to job descriptions, recruitment and retention, and what I like to refer to as transition, or in some cases, termination. Each of these factors will support your ability to manage your staff's performance and set the work environment. Start with the ability to articulate and communicate broadly about your vision for either the organization or the team you manage. What are the outcomes or impact you envision for your team that will make it successful? For example, we want to improve access to and satisfaction with health services for those who are most in need. Then you and your management team, board of directors, and staff need to outline how this happens within each of their responsibilities before an employee is introduced into the organization. Once the employee is there, building a vision with your team is also an important component to establishing an effective team and setting workplace agreements. You may ask, what do you want to achieve? They may state, we'll help our clients navigate relevant health systems to ensure we provide the highest quality care to our patients. The purpose of creating a vision is to build buy-in from each member. Can you articulate the vision of your organization? Can you recall creating and communicating a vision with your team? As an employee, if I know what the organization is about, I can assess if this is fundamentally the place for me to thrive. Is there a plan? You need one for at least a year and ideally up to 5 years. This is often accomplished with a strategic plan, operational plan, or logic model. A document that reflects and connects outcomes with tasks implemented that can be reasonably accomplished within a designated time frame. With your team, you may ask, what do we want to accomplish this year? What do we need to accomplish these objectives? Who will do what tasks? And what is our timeline? Ideally, all staff and board should have some input and ownership with this plan. A good facilitator can help. Again, this plan should be communicated to your team and staff in a manner that is transparent and accessible by all. Cultural proficiency. Cultural proficiency, also referred to as cultural competency, is an important ribbon that should be woven throughout an organization. There should be a framework built on a mission and vision that reflects the organization can thrive in multicultural contexts. This is done by integrating principles of cultural competency into all aspects of your work. My organization, Cardia, has a framework that is greatly influenced by Terry Cross and colleagues who define cultural competence as a set of congruent behaviors, attitudes, and policies that come together in a system, agency, or among professionals and enable that system, agency, or those professionals to work effectively in cross-cultural situations. In addition, our work is influenced by the National Center for Cultural Competence Statement, modified from Cross and colleagues' work, and is also incorporated into our framework. Cultural competence requires that organizations have a defined set of values and principles and demonstrate behaviors, attitudes, policies, and structures that enable them to work effectively cross-culturally. That organization have the capacity to value diversity, conduct self-assessment, manage the dynamics of difference, acquire and institutionalize cultural knowledge, and adapt to diversity and the cultural context of communities they serve. That organizations have a defined set of values and principles and demonstrate behaviors, attitudes, policies, and structures that enable them to work effectively cross-culturally. That organizations incorporate the above in all aspects of policymaking, administration, practice, and service delivery, systematically involve consumers, families, and communities. Don't let this overwhelm you. Cultural competence is a developmental process that evolves over an extended period of time. Both individuals and organizations are at various levels of awareness, knowledge, and skills along the cultural competence continuum. So what does this mean for your organization? Cultural proficiency should be reflected in the way staff interact with each other. It should also be reflected in the way they do their work or deliver services. Once the cultural framework is created and adopted by your organization, you need guidance in your role as a manager about how you share these expectations. I will briefly highlight the processes where cultural proficiency should be reflected. Policy. This can be reflected in agency standards, the mission statement, cultural competency statements, and in job qualifications. Attitudes. Implement ways to conduct self-assessment that reflects cultural values and result in increased access to communities served. Structure. How you recruit staff, provide staff appropriate training, and design facility or decor. In practice, implement ways to conduct clarification of values in the agency, documenting how to implement your work within a cultural framework. Next, we will discuss job descriptions. This is a critical piece for assessing performance, and we will highlight this later when we discuss performance appraisals. Basic job descriptions include job functions, duties and responsibilities, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and additional desirable qualifications. Recruitment of best candidates and documentation. Recruit the best candidates that reflect the community. This is another area where you can be intentional about implementation of your cultural proficiency plan and emphasize diversity in your candidate pool. Make sure everyone on your staff knows that you're hiring and what you're looking for. They are very helpful identifying where to place announcements about the position. Be flexible where legally possible. Use innovative approaches to recruitment, including places where you may not have recruited in the past. Check with local colleges and universities about placement in their job centers. Send job postings to local community organizations, faith communities, and neighborhood papers and blogs. Community advocacy groups, local provider associations, race, ethnic, or cultural media, churches, business groups. Documentation allows and encourages fairness in the recruitment, interview, and selection process. Develop criteria for screening resumes. We often take key factors from our job descriptions and our organizational values and develop a key criteria list. We then develop phone screening and face-to-face interview questions based on the criteria. Again, remember to incorporate organizational values and talent you value into the criteria. Interview questions. Be aware of what you can and cannot ask. Here are a list of areas where we outlined what you can ask and what you cannot. For example, you can ask, will your observed Sabbath and holidays create a conflict with our office hours? You cannot ask about denomination, parish, pastor, holidays observed, and religious affiliations. You should develop your list and have it reviewed by HR and legal counsel. Again, you want to set the right tone and send the appropriate messages to potential staff by asking appropriate questions. This tone will also reflect positively once a staff person's on board. Now I will share sample interview questions. What do you need to know? Work experience. Sample questions include, describe your current work experience and duties. How do you spend an average day? How did you change the content of your job when you started it until now? Discuss some of the problems you've encountered on the job. Which aspects of your previous job did you do best? In which areas did you need help or guidance from your boss? In what areas have your supervisors complimented you? Qualifications other than work experience. Sample questions include, how do you view the job for which you are applying? What in your background particularly qualifies you for this job? If you were hired, in which areas could you contribute immediately? In which areas would you need additional training? Motivation. Sample questions include, why did you choose this career area? What do you seek in a job? Of all the aspects of your last jobs, what did you like the most, the least? What are you looking for in this job that you're not getting from your current job? Stability. Sample questions include, what were your reasons for leaving each previous job? Why are you seeking a new job now? What were your original career goals? How have these goals changed over the years? Resourcefulness. Sample questions include, describe some of the more difficult problems you've encountered in your work. How did you solve these problems? Who helped you solve these problems? Working with others. Sample questions include, on what teams or committees have you served? What was your role in this team? What did you like best about working on this team, or least? How much do you work on your own? As part of a team, which do you prefer? Orientation plan. Orientation is an opportunity to share workplace expectations, ideally in writing, and should highlight behavior and conduct in the workplace. You can also ask for staff input, and it gives you an opportunity to see if the expectations are reasonable and flush out any potential snags that may present themselves. Use the organizational values and office culture when communicating expectations, and discuss what it looks like in practice. How do you expect your staff to demonstrate the agency values? There are many ways to make staff feel welcome. Now I'll share some sample employee orientation activities. A guided tour of the entire agency clinic site by the supervisor or director, including introduction to staff. Review agency mission statement, agency philosophy, and purpose. Talk about your team vision, values, and expectations. Provide staff with an overview of your organizational chart, how jobs interrelate, who supervises whom, and job descriptions. Share clinic agency protocols or standards, even those that are not specific to the job. Salary, personnel policy, insurance, and other benefits. Policies and procedures regarding absences, punctuality, confidentiality, emergency, smoking, and accidents are also important to share. Telephone, internet, and other technology use. How to use and what are the expectations. Supplies, ordering, care of equipment, storage, keys. Specific and relevant agency rules and regulations. Agency norms. Review the new employee's individual job description. Discuss expectations and encourage questions at any time. Schedule a follow-up check-in and a timeline to ensure orientation to the new job is progressing as expected. Assign a buddy or mentor to aid in the ongoing orientation. A clear orientation for all new employees is the beginning of your performance review process. Now stop and create a list of other welcoming tasks. Performance reviews. Performance appraisals are a vital part of giving feedback to the employee. Capturing employee performance in written form helps the employee to see where they are doing well and where they can improve. Denying or delaying this form of feedback can be detrimental on many levels to you and the employee. You may lose an employee who is excelling and not receiving this feedback, as they may grow frustrated and seek out other employment. The performance appraisal should be an opportunity for learning and growth. This is a collective process which gives the employee meaningful feedback on their professional growth over a 12-month period. Performance appraisals need to be honest, fair, and respectful. And remember, no surprises. The appraisal should reflect the appraisal period, including goals reached, work production, innovations or new ideas that worked, performance issues. Do not reiterate the discipline, but address it in the appraisal through a paragraph or a few sentences. Measurable items. If you can measure production, show the employee's progress or decline. There are many different approaches to appraisals. Some are initiated and generated by the manager, and others are initiated by the employee with guidance and review from the manager. Before you start, you can obtain information from previous supervisors if you are not the only supervisor for the entire appraisal period. It is always ideal to get input from the employee prior to writing the appraisal about their accomplishments, barriers, and goals. Gather your own information about the employee, both positive areas and areas which need improvement. Note the accomplishments and the barriers that you have observed for the employee. Note any goals you may have for them. This should be in a format and process that everyone is aware of, and it is as transparent as possible. It is a good idea to share this during the orientation so there are no surprises. Keep in mind, written performance expectations let you compare the employee's performance with mutually understood expectations and minimize ambiguity in providing feedback. Performance expectations exist whether or not they are discussed or put in writing. When you observe an employee's performance, you usually make a judgment about whether the performance is acceptable. How do you decide what's acceptable and what's unacceptable? Establishing a baseline for measuring performance allows the supervisor to provide specific feedback that describes the gap between expected and actual performance. Performance expectations are written specifically for the employee based on their current workload and position description. A shared understanding of what supervisors expect from employees is essential for employee success and for good supervisor-employee relations. These expectations should be well known long before a review, ideally when employee first starts and during the period up to the formal appraisal session. Without clear expectations, employees can waste effort doing work that has to be done over, waste time doing unneeded work, and worry about not knowing if they are doing the right things. With clear expectations, employees understand why they are doing their work, what exactly they should be doing, and the relative importance of different parts of their jobs. Tips to consider. Actively listen. This will help you hear when the expectations may be misunderstood, not being followed, or need to be recommunicated or need to be revisited. Lead by example. When the management team follows the expectations, staff will more than likely do the same. Recognize staff for meeting or exceeding the expectation. Hold staff accountable. If staff aren't held accountable to meet the expectation, then it is not an expectation. Regularly communicate the expectations. Use day-to-day interactions with staff to refocus on the expectations. Carefully choose the method of communicating expectations: email, voicemail, letter, staff meeting, one-on-one, stand-up meetings, etc. Cover the expectation in person, and use email only as a follow-up to put what was discussed in writing. One of the most commonly recognized approaches to effective communication is OARS, which is an interactive, skill-based communication model that was adapted from a client-centered approach using motivational interviewing principles to enhance a person's motivation. These skills include both verbal and nonverbal responses and behaviors, and must reflect cultural sensitivity to individual differences as we provide high-quality, culturally proficient services. For in-depth information on this approach, please review the CPCA module titled Motivational Interviewing. Open-ended questions. The purpose is to convey interest and encourage the other person to keep talking. To do this, do not agree or disagree. Use neutral words and vary voice intonations. Examples: tell me more, or what are your thoughts about? Affirmations. The purpose is to acknowledge and validate the person's past decisions, abilities, and behaviors or actions. To do this, acknowledge the value of their feelings and show appreciation for their efforts and actions. Example: it's great that you've been able to complete the data entry on time and with little supervision. Reflective listening. The purpose is to show you are listening and understanding what is being said and to check your interpretations. To do this, reflect the speaker's basic feelings. Example: I know you want to complete this report and information is not being provided to you in a timely manner. Is that right? Summarizing. The purpose is to review, pull together important ideas and facts, and establish a basis for further discussion. To do this, restate major feelings and ideas. For example, let's review some of the ideas you just expressed. Coaching and feedback. Coaching and feedback from a supervisor provides the employee with guidance on projects or tasks, which can be strongly motivating. Coaching refers to the continuous or frequent administration of feedback in a way that optimizes employee performance. Coaching is simply investing in the ongoing development of your staff. Feedback is defined as information we provide to employees about their job performance and their work-related behavior in order to help them meet individual, group, and organizational expectations and goals. Feedback can reflect positive performance, competent performance, or needs improvement performance. In any of these cases, feedback must focus on the facts, not attitude, be detailed, be accurate, be future-oriented, be supportive, be timely, and be continual. Coaching and feedback have many important applications and functions. To improve performance, look for patterns in the employee's behavior. If you see a performance problem or a potential performance problem, determine if the employee understands what is expected, what obstacles might be preventing good performance, and whether there's a lack of skills, training, or motivation. Next, to maintain standard performance, give praise to keep performance on track. If the person wants to expand skills, allow for the appropriate training. To encourage employees to exceed performance standards, praise to keep performance on track. Provide training to expand skills. Mentor for increased responsibility. Assign special projects when possible. To assist employees in developing new skills, provide training, and give feedback to reinforce learning. There are two types of feedback, reinforcing and redirecting. Reinforcing feedback identifies job-related behaviors that contribute to individual, group, and organizational goals and encourages the employee to repeat and develop them. In other words, use reinforcing feedback to tell employees what they are doing right. Be clear with yourself so you can be clear with your listener. The purpose of reinforcing conversation is to acknowledge behavior you want to see continued. Describe specifically the actions or communication you are reinforcing. Tell the listener how their behavior contributes positively to the work or workplace. Tell the listener you appreciate the behavior and its positive impact. Redirecting feedback identifies job-related behaviors that contribute to individual, group, and organizational goals and helps the employee to develop alternative strategies. In other words, use redirecting feedback to highlight a gap between expected performance and the actual performance. Be clear with yourself so you can be clear with your listener. The purpose of the conversation is to redirect behavior you want to see changed. Describe the actions or communication you are redirecting. If the behavior can be seen or heard, it can be altered. Tell the listener how their behavior negatively affects the work or workplace. After you write the appraisal, you should schedule a meeting with the employee to discuss their performance evaluation. If possible, present a copy of the performance appraisal in advance. Answer any questions they may have. Then have the employee sign the appraisal and provide them with a copy, and of course send the signed appraisal to HR to be placed in the employee's file. Developmental planning draws on the rest of the performance management cycle to support performance expectations by identifying training and skills necessary for employees to excel at their jobs. Managers should work with employees in developmental planning throughout the year and help them use the resources available for this purpose. The formal appraisal provides a regular opportunity to review whether employees have the current training and skills necessary and to develop a training plan. At the same time, managers should help employees plan and meet their own career and personal development goals within available resources and within the context of the agency's mission, needs, and priorities. When organizations invest in the development of their employees, research finds that employees have upgraded skills. Employees are more likely to work to their full potential and are equipped to deal with the changing demands of the workplace. Employees have higher morale, career satisfaction, and creativity, and productivity and responsiveness in meeting objectives increase. Again, professional development opportunities should be shared and transparent at the time of orientation, throughout the feedback cycle, through performance appraisal. Equal access to professional development opportunities is also embedded in your cultural proficiency plan. Mentoring. How will you provide mentoring for your staff? Who is your mentor? Earlier I talked about great managers and supervisors. Now I want to talk about mentoring and how it might differ or not from being a great manager. There are many definitions of manager and mentor. For consistency's sake, let's look at definitions from Wikipedia. Wikipedia defines a manager as an individual who engages in management or the act of getting people together to accomplish desired goals and objectives using available resources efficiently and effectively. And it defines a mentor as a trusted friend, counselor, or teacher, usually a more experienced person. While not all mentors are managers, effective managers generally engage in developing people and mentoring, as discussed in the 4 keys to great management. Effective managers generally engage in mentoring through developing or realizing and promoting the potential in people. There is a great resource on collaborative leadership developed by Turning Point, noted in the references at the end of this module. Turning Point also offers tips for mentoring assistance, and these tips include: be clear, establish mutual goals and roles for your relationship. Listen. Use active listening skills to understand concerns and feelings. Provide constructive feedback. Share unbiased perceptions in a kind and honest way. Question. Use targeted questions to help reflect your experience and discover key learning points. Shift perspective. Provide the big picture as a context for daily ups and downs. Give appropriate information when needed. Share information and resources to assist in finding solutions. Explore options. Model this process by brainstorming. Confront negative behaviors and demonstrate in a kind and constructive way how certain negative behaviors can interfere with stated goals. And last, be yourself. Be honest about your strengths and weaknesses and offer your own lessons learned, struggles, and successes. Corrective action and termination. Making the decision to discharge an employee is very difficult, and outside of illegal and inappropriate behavior, it must be carried out with due diligence. What are agency policies? How does your organization conduct corrective action and termination? If an employee is terminated, what is your follow-up plan with the other staff? Many organizations have outlined in their employee handbook grounds for immediate termination. They also have a corrective action plan and process that identifies what an employee needs to do to improve performance and the steps, timeline, and consequences if they do not. It is your job as manager to know, as part of the managing performance process, answers to the following questions. What has been the process? Reflecting back on orientation, feedback, and coaching, what has been documented all along? Did you document performance feedback? In appropriate cases, have progressive disciplinary steps been taken? How will the termination be carried out? Not alone. This should be a management team decision. Know the logistics once decision of discharge has been made. How might it impact the team? There should be planned communication with staff about the discharge of the employee, and if relevant, plans to replace the individual. You do not have to share any information about the discharge, but acknowledge that the employee is no longer with the organization, and here are the plans to fill the position. How might it impact you? Identify the type of support you will need when you take this action. Most of us do not make this decision lightly and are very aware of the impact it has on the employee's life and on the organization. I would like Jeanette, the manager, to share closing thoughts.
I love being a manager, and a key component is making good hiring decisions and providing ongoing coaching and feedback. I try to make the workplace a positive environment.
Staff are our treasures. By recognizing our strengths, we can serve as cultural resources to others. By recognizing our weaknesses, we can identify areas for individual and organizational improvement. Here are a few references and resources for you to access. This concludes our online training session on managing performance. Again, this module is part of a series of online courses provided by the California Primary Care Association as a demonstration of their mission of strengthening its member clinics and networks through advocacy, education, and services in order to improve the health status of their communities. For more information, please visit the websites for California Primary Care Association and CARDIA. Thank you for your participation in this web-based module.